9:02 a.m. 15 years ago today. That's when a blast ripped through the federal building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 people. Survivors and family members will attend a memorial today. The bombing was the deadliest domestic terror attack in U.S. history. But are we any safer? CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Bob Orr has more. Bob, good morning.
Good morning, Harry. Well, in the 15 years since the Oklahoma City bombing, we have seen other attacks by domestic extremists. The shootings at Fort Hood last fall, the deliberate crash in February of a small plane into an IRS building in Texas, just two examples. But we have to say the domestic incidents have been largely overshadowed by the threat from al-Qaeda. Now, with homegrown radicalism on the rise, some security experts warn we need to better secure the home front. Survivors of the Oklahoma City bombing, even 15 years later, the wounds are still fresh.
It seems like some weeks I cry every day, and then sometime you can go for a month and not cry.
That day, April 19, 1995, changed everything for the families of the 168 killed and the 600-plus survivors. And it changed the way all of us live. Blast barriers now surround many offices and federal buildings. Heavily armed security forces routinely patrol train stations and airports. Still, experts warn we remain vulnerable.
Timothy McVeigh drove a rental truck up to the Murrah building in Oklahoma City and detonated that bomb, which was made of homemade components and ammonium nitrate. You could still do that tomorrow.
A CBS News poll found that nearly 40% of Americans now believe domestic terrorism is a bigger threat than international terrorism. A marked increase from the foreign-focused fears triggered by 9/11. The militia movement is once again energized, fueled by critics who are angry with the government. Bill Clinton, president at the time of the Oklahoma City attack, says today's rhetoric reminds him of 1995.
I realized that there were a lot of parallels between the early 90s and now, both in the feeling of economic dislocation and the level of uncertainty people felt.
Survivors and family members of those who died in the bombing are now gathering at the blast site in Oklahoma City to commemorate the anniversary and to make a larger point that we all have to remain vigilant. Harry?
Speaking of that vigilance, what do your sources tell you about the threat of domestic terrorism?
It's about the same, they think, Harry, as it is from transnational terrorists. But the big problem, the lone wolf, the radicalized American who can travel freely, who can reach across and touch real al-Qaeda groups. Najibullah Zazi, the man that wanted to bomb the subways in New York, is kind of the poster boy for the threat.
All right, Bob Orr, thanks so much. Do appreciate it.
A lot happens early on The Early Show, weekday mornings on CBS.